Looking back, 1904, a peek into the past. Growing up in 1904, nursemaids took care of babies. At the turn of the century, when girls like Samantha were growing up, babies were born at home. Usually, a doctor was there to help the mother, while the father and other family members waited in another room. The birth of a new baby was a very special event, and the newest member of a family was quite pampered. If parents could afford to, they hired a nursemaid or nanny who would bathe, dress, feed, and entertain the baby. Nursemaids dressed babies in fancy long dresses and ruffled bonnets. They took them for walks in elaborate carriages called prams. A baby usually had its own special room called the nursery. Elegant prams had umbrellas. By the time a child started to walk, the nursery became a playroom and a dining room as well as a bedroom. Children ate most of their meals in the nursery instead of in the dining room with their parents. They sat at child-sized tables and chairs and used child-sized dishes. They kept their toys and books in the nursery and played with them there. Young children had tea in their nursery. Before the turn of the century, most American children did not have a lot of time to play. Instead, they were expected to help their parents with farming and housework. By the time children like Samantha were growing up, adults wanted children to play. They understood that childhood was... nearly all children had time to play in 1904. They understood that childhood was a special stage of life. They built city parks with playgrounds for children. They invented new toys and games that were sold in toy stores and catalogs. And they passed laws that said children were not allowed to work in factories so that all boys and girls could have time to play. Illustrations from books in 1904. When children like Samantha played, they sometimes pretended to be doing grown-up jobs. Girls used miniature stoves, sewing machines, and carpet sweepers to pretend they were keeping house. They also pretended that they were mothers, using dolls that looked like babies or small children. Girls and boys enjoyed reading books like Alice in Wonderland and The Wizard of Oz. Teddy bears were a popular new toy in 1904. Games like checkers and dominoes were popular too. Toy stove and sewing machine. At the turn of the century, clothing styles made children look very different from grown-ups, but often boys and girls didn't look very different from one another. Many boys wore their hair in long curls, and both young girls and young boys wore dresses. As boys grew older, they dressed in short pants or breeches and then in long trousers. It was never considered proper for girls to wear long pants or shorts. The barefoot child in this picture is a boy. Even though children were expected to play and have fun at the turn of the century, adults wanted them to grow up to be ladies and gentlemen. By the time girls were 8 or 9, they went to dancing school, took music lessons, learned to paint, and did fancy sewing. They were allowed to join the adults for meals in the dining room, and they practiced grown-up manners and conversation when they went to birthday parties or when calling on friends with their mothers. Calling cards and dancing school were part of growing up. By the time Samantha and her friends were 15, they looked and acted more like adults than like young children. They wore long dresses and adult styles that made them look grown up. Instead of wearing huge hair bows and long curls, they used pins and combs to put their hair up in elegant styles. They began wearing corsets to keep their figures looking trim. Many of them stopped going to school or went to a finishing school where they finished their education as proper young ladies. At a finishing school, they learned how to manage servants, how to run an orderly household, and how to give parties. Corset, curling iron, and hairpins. Once they turned 18, girls like Samantha would become part of the grown-up world. Some made coming out or debutante parties, which introduced them to elegant society. Others followed different paths and went to college or got jobs. Some became suffragists and worked for women's votes. From that time on, whatever young ladies chose to do, they left childhood behind forever. Some girls became debutantes. Some became suffragists. Goodbye. I'll see you soon.